Welcome! Today we're going to make a hexagonal table using Tinkercad, and I'm going to just reuse some of the models that I've already used to make some other scenery. I'm going to take this long table here because I want it to look wooden, so I'm going to take the wooden slats and use it in my hexagonal shape. I'm not very good in Tinkercad, but I have learned that you can use the solid models and then holes to make pretty much anything you need to. So I used a hole to cut out the perfect shape, even though I have these wood slats. Everything in this table is purely squares, blocks if you will, and then you just flatten them, lengthen them to the size that you want to make the slats, and then group them all together. I'm going backwards. I'm going to ungroup them so that I have my wood slats. But if you need to create your own, that's really all it is just squishing down a square and lengthening it out. If you're not familiar with Tinkercad, they have the black and the white squares when you select an object that allow you to manipulate it. There's also a black arrow at the top, or sometimes the bottom depending on how you're looking at it, that will let you move it up and down. And if you hold the shift key while you click and drag, it will actually drag your whole screen. Right clicking will rotate. You can also use the box in the top left corner. There's some undo at the top. You can import models if you want, and then once you're completed with your model you can export it. Most of what I do, like I say, is just using the objects and the holes to create what I need it to create. And in this case we're going to use a polygon. We want it to be a hexagon, so it needs to have 6 sides. And then I'm going to, for this purpose, I'm going to make it larger than scale, but if you're making this for Dungeons and Dragons or another tabletop game, you'll want it to be closer to scale. This is going to be huge just for our demonstration purposes, but it's the same method that you will use when you create your own tables and your own furnishing, scenery, pretty much anything that you want. Tinkercad is a very easy to use program. That's why I use it, because I am an amateur and I do not know how to 3D model very well. I've used Fusion 360. I really like Fusion 360, but I'm not very good at it. I think once you learn the tools and how to manipulate items, it makes things a lot easier. But I am very simple-minded, so taking a shape and a hole and manipulating those is easier for me. So here I want to have my table have a bunch of main slats in the middle, and then I want some other slats going around each edge. And so to do that, I'm going to make it the correct length, and then I'm actually going to take some squares and I'm going to rotate them 60 degrees and cut some angles into it so that they will fit each piece into the side of those. Make sure that my middle piece is long enough to go in between the pieces that are there, and then I'm going to cut the sides of the one with the squares so that I can put each slab on each face of the table, and then at the end I will have all the rest of it just filled in. So here I'm rotating the squares, cutting off those corners. You can change in the bottom right corner the increments that it will move when you use the arrow keys to move things around. You can drag them, but dragging it sometimes doesn't always get it exactly where you want. So you can use the arrow keys as well to move by those increments in the bottom right corner. And now that I have it cut, I just have to create copies. You can use Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste, just like you would in pretty much anything else. And then I'm just going to spin and rotate them. When they're not the straight ones, I'm going to rotate it 30 degrees to make that 60-degree angle. And then I'm going to raise it up 1.2 millimeters in my case, because I have my main piece that's 1.2 millimeters, and then I want my slabs to sit right on top of that. So I'm just going to angle those in there, get them as close as I can. There is an alignment tool at the top right that you can use to center or go to one side or another, or have them be aligned in height with each other. But in this case, I'm just turning it to 30 degrees and then just using the arrow keys at the lowest increment to get it as close as I can. once you print it out, and especially with how small it's going to be when you print it, you won't notice it. But I want it to be perfect because for some reason I'm a perfectionist. The alignment tool won't exactly work for me in this instance. It would for maybe the first two that I did, but I'm just gonna go ahead and manually do it. That looks pretty good, so now I'm just going to make sure that my middle section has the proper spacing on the left and the right, and then I'm going to copy it and paste it so that I can make it longer to fill in that whole area there, align it together, and then this is where I will actually use the alignment tool. It will come in handy to put these two there. You click the black dots and it aligns it to the left and the right. There it's, and then I'm going to group it as soon as it's aligned properly. And now for the tricky part, I'm going to use another hexagon to cut a hole around the outside of these planks, kind of like I did for the table at the very beginning. So I'm going to take my extra hexagon and I'm going to resize it to as close as I can in the middle of what I've already created, with just a little bit of space in between to try and keep that spacing in between the planks. There I grouped the planks all together so that I can use the alignment tool to align that exactly in the center, and then look around to make sure that my gaps are good. And once that's all set, I'm going to actually turn that into a hole and cut that hole out of an even bigger square so that that way I have my cookie cutter, as it were, to cut out my table section. Alignment tool comes in really handy because then I can just center everything, group it to cut it out, center it with the other, and look, it's great. So I'm going to group that all together in one thing and turn it into a brown color so that it looks like a table. And then I'm going to go and use one of the long table feet and just make it larger for 1 foot in the center of this table. I'm going to make the feet a little wider so that they match. It's going to be a little bit more apparent now that it's bigger. And then I'm going to use that for my main foot. Later I actually made these angles not as steep because when you print that it gets to be pretty sharp. So I made the angle a little less harsh. And just so you know, for when you create this for your own tabletop games, 1 inch, which is what the squares or the hexagons of your game map are, is equal to 25.4 millimeters. In Tinkercad or most of your other programs that you use, it will mostly be in millimeters. So I redid this so that it was more to scale. The table I made was approximately, I want to say 12 foot, a 12-foot hexagon. It was about 2¼ inches. So here I'm just playing with it to see what it'll look like in the program. Make sure that my foot is big enough, not oddly huge, but that's all you gotta do. Then you can just export each piece as an STL, open it with whatever 3D print slicing program you want, whether it be Cura, Simplify 3D, or some proprietary program that came with your printer, and then you can slice it and print it. If you like this video, make sure to show your appreciation by subscribing to my channel, click the thumbs up to like it, share the video with your friends, join my Patreon to show your love and support, and get discounts on merchandise on 3dmtabletop.com, where you can purchase a print of this table and chairs, custom dice, dice cases and towers, miniatures, DM tools, and more. Go enjoy the things you'll make.